Welcome to I Am Creation podcast.
My name is Brian Kelly. I'm the founder of 9D Breathwork.
What you created, it's unique.
I realized, well, if that's the world that I want to live in, then it's the world that I have to create myself.
I love how the frustration came into the passion.
We carry all this tension in our body. All we need to do is figure out a way to consciously release it. Breathwork just helps them to close that gap between I'm a victim and I am creation.
So I can create the reality I want.
Trauma is one of the most misunderstood phenomena. The animal kingdom has the ability to shake that off immediately.
It's such a powerful tool, guys.
Our bodies know exactly what they need to do to purge and heal.
A lot of people that I know, they have this like anxiety and depression, so how breathwork can help.
What breathwork does for things like anxiety, depression, it's like a nervous system reset.
My body has all the wisdom.
This is the place that is where all the magic happens.
I have full yes for everything what you said. Ooh. I will take you to the journey to explore breathwork. And before we start the podcast, I would really love to share my experience about 9D breathwork. And I had the possibility to try this tool with Brian, and I had a private session. And it was such a powerful experience for me. And just in 1.5 hours, I released so much. I felt like I lost 10 kilograms. I felt so much healing. I felt so much release, and all the traumas, all the things that I was carrying for so many years just melted during that session, and I've created so much space inside. And after that, I had the possibility to fill this space with the things that I wanted. But it was the moment for me, like really to let go and to release. And I don't know how you created this tool, but this tool is really working. And like really thank you for following your path, for bringing your gift into reality and supporting people. So I would like to ask you to introduce yourself.
My name is Brian Kelly. I'm the founder of 9D Breathwork, also Breath Masters, an online school for training breathwork facilitators all around the world. And I stumbled into breathwork by necessity in 2018. I guess my story isn't all that uncommon for many people that finally find breathwork or breathwork finds them. I was a very stressed out and overwhelmed and anxious entrepreneur, trying to juggle too many things at one time, multiple businesses, trying to be a father for the first time, trying to keep myself together, and I was dying on the inside. And I think what I got really good at doing was pretending that I was okay. And so I even had myself convinced that I was okay, but the reality is there was just this massive amount of struggle and tension that was living inside of me that I didn't want to face. I didn't want to believe that I was struggling as bad as I was. So I masked it really well. And so of course, when I went to my first breathwork journey,
You had the same experience as I had, yeah?
all that, it was no running and no hiding from it anymore. It all came to the surface, and the amount of energy that I could feel in my body, I think that was the most surprising thing, is just how much I could feel for the first time. I don't know that I've ever felt that much. And so that was obviously a expansive experience for me. It was a bit of a mind-blowing emoji, and I came out of that very confused and curious of why this just isn't everywhere in the world. You know, the questions I was asking is, if this is effective, why aren't we teaching it to children in schools? Why aren't we prescribing it as medicine in clinics? Why doesn't everybody know about? Why did it take me 30 some odd years to figure it out? And I felt robbed, really. And so I was looking around and trying to answer that question, and I realized, well, if that's the world that I want to live in, then it's the world that I have to create myself. And so that was the beginning of the adventure for me. And everything from there, it just started from me being a very inspired and passionate breather myself before I even considered becoming a coach. And that passion just continued to develop and unfold and develop and unfold, and the universe aligned all the stars in order for me to be able to bring this medicine out into the world. And it has brought me to this couch with you, and it's for that.
I love it. I love it.
The amount of impact that we have the ability to make in this space is unfathomable. And I'm very blessed to have had the opportunity to train thousands of people and to guide thousands of people. And this is still the beginning of my journey. And so I have a lot more work to go to do before I take my last breath. And so this is what I'll be doing for the rest of my life.
How you got this idea to create this 90 breathwork? Because like in reality there are so many like tools, just normal breathwork, but I've never heard about 90 breathwork, and I was like, okay, 90 breathwork, okay, let's try it. How you got this idea to create this powerful tool?
How can I'll say this. God gave me this idea.
I love it.
You know, they say some of the best creations and innovations are born from frustration. And so this, as I started to go into guiding sessions online during COVID, you know, I was at the Astana and guiding, you know, 200 or 300 people every single week online. And one particular day, the day that created 9D, I just didn't know it yet. The internet was terrible. And so I was patchy going in and out. And when I listened to it back that night, I was embarrassed. It was like people were in a very fragile, emotional, raw, sensitive state. And if I'm patchy coming in and out, it's just not a good look. And I felt very guilty. And so I went to bed this night deeply frustrated. What can I do to fix the sound and to create a better sound experience? And I must have been so ruminating on that idea that during my dream time, I must have been working full time to come up with this. When I came out of that sleep that next morning, it was like, boom! It had a name. It already had a name, 9D Breathwork. And I had heard and was familiar with this idea of 9D sound, which is this kind of like traveling stereo sound. But I had never heard of anybody doing anything remotely close with breathwork. So I'm Googling and trying to find who's doing this kind of thing. And I thought, somebody's got to be doing this. 9D is a big thing. Breathwork is a big thing. Somebody must have put it together. And I couldn't find anyone that was doing anything really deep with sound and breathwork. And so once I started to realize that was the direction, all the other ideas just came flooding in. Well, if it's sound, it's like binaural beats and solfeggio frequencies and isochronic tones, and what about hypnotherapy? What about NLP? It's like whatever I could figure out a way to responsibly and consciously put all these different vibrational frequencies together. Here we are with this thing that we now call 9D breathwork, and it's just the beginning, because what you can do with sound and frequency for healing is a blank canvas of possibility. So we're really just getting started with it.
Yeah, I love how the frustration came into the passion.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like really what you created, it's unique. Like really it's unique. And when you were talking about your creation and how it came, like for me, it came in the same way the retreat that I'm creating, like I'm creation, it came same way, like really just download from the gut in the moment that when I was like asking myself, okay, what should I do? So there was some frustration inside. So I know how these gifts can finally came to the surface.
Of course.
Yes, but you were ready. You were ready.
Thank you.
Okay, I have some questions. I have some questions.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. How does breathwork enable us to connect with our true selves and experience qualities like self-love, liberation, acceptance, balance, and peace?
Yeah, great question. I mean, first of all, these things that you just mentioned, self-love, balance, all these things, this is our natural state of being. So I think that, you know, we put this as something that we need to achieve, like it's something that it's out there. But the reality is, it's like the key is to just strip away the layers that hold us back from that state, that keep us from living this life of our truth, our true essence. And so, you know, one of the words that's thrown around a lot in this space is trauma, but it's a word that a lot of people don't connect with.
I have the next question about trauma, so you will explain what is trauma.
But the reality is like most people can connect with this idea that we have this tension that we've built up in our lives, this energetic residue, this, we call it in the space psychosomatic tension. And the symptoms of this tension that we carry, it can be physical tension, it can be emotional tension, energetic tension. And how this manifests is all these patterns of behavior that we've picked up along the way, all the stress and the anxiety and the overwhelm and the irritability and the frustration over these tiny little inconveniences. You know, people get triggered and they explode. And it can even be physical, headaches, stomach aches, fatigue. It can be all of these things. And people have gotten so used to living in these patterns that we've normalized it. And we think that this is the natural way of being because I must be because we're all struggling with these issues. And the reality is that is all things that we picked up along the way. We weren't born with those things. We weren't struggling with anxiety and depression when we were babies and when we were children. We picked all that up along the way. And so breathwork just allows us to clear the slate. We carry it all in our body. We carry all this tension in our body. And all we need to do is figure out a way to consciously release it.
Yeah.
And this is where, the dichotomy between psychotherapy, which is a very kind of top-down, let's talk about our problems, let's figure out what they are through our own filters of beliefs and everything else. And there's a very beautiful place for psychotherapy. But I know many people that have come to breathwork that said, I was working with my therapist for 10 years and we were barely scratching the surface. And then I did one breathwork journey and I feel like I got more done and then in the 10 years that I did with my therapist. And so the two have to go together. And so like I do constantly a lot of research, and one of the guys that I found, he actually showed that cognitive understanding of our struggles without a somatic element of release actually can cause more harm than good. Because think about it, once you consciously understand what you're struggling with, does the struggle go away? No, not necessarily. I know people who it took them 5 years to figure out that their core issue is related to daddy issues with their father. And then once they understood it, there was like an aha epiphany moment. Wow, I understand it now. But then the frustration kicked in because the patterns of behavior continued to loop even though there was a conscious understanding of the problem. So that basically means is that without a somatic element of being able to release that stuck, trapped energy, it's just going to continue to ruminate. And breathwork is just by far, there's all sorts of trauma release exercises. There's all sorts of somatic release exercises to release this energy. But something about somatic breathwork, deep dive breathwork, the way that I teach it, it's kind of the fast track that really allows us to get to the core and the depths of who we are and to release so that when we come out of that, we can feel that heightened sense of self-awareness. We can feel more at cause in our life as opposed to at effect, less like victims, more like creators. I am creation, you know?
I am.
If you're yeah, what's the opposite of I am creation? I'm a victim. And this is the world that so many people are living in. And breathwork just helps them to close that gap between I'm a victim and I am creation.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, and I can confirm that it was the moment when all these past traumas, all these limiting beliefs that were stopping me, and I was in this victim mode. Finally releasing it, it gave me so much power from inside, so I can create the reality I want. So I fully agree with you. Yes, yes. Okay, so let's talk about trauma. Can you explain what is trauma and how does it manifest in our everyday lives and professional performance? And could you describe the ways in which trauma affects individuals and their ability to function effectively in various aspects of their life?
Yeah, this is the interesting thing. I just did a TED Talk on this not long ago. It's trauma is one of the most misunderstood phenomena on the planet today. People are starting to become more aware of it now, thanks to conversations like this. Trauma is actually, what people mostly, when they think of trauma, is they think of the big things, the big accidents, sexual abuse, child abuse, wartime trauma, PTSD, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, these kind of things.
Yeah.
But the reality is the trauma is a lot more subtle than that. Trauma can be any kind of an emotional experience that we had throughout our life, especially in childhood, but throughout our life. During those first 7-8 years, we're very tender and we're a sponge. So everything that's very emotional that's happened is programming our operating system. So anytime there's an emotional experience, it can literally be any emotional experience. It can be some form of rejection. We all go through these things as children. We can't be shielded from all of them. But imagine a time in your life where you were a kid, where you were shamed for who you are, or you were rejected for something that you did. We can all, even if we don't consciously have the memory, we all went through those moments. Those are traumas. Those are traumas because at the moment, our nervous system shut down the feeling aspect of that emotional trigger. Because It was trying to save us from the emotional turmoil that we just didn't have the capacity to cope with at the time, which is brilliant. This is what Gabor Mate calls the wisdom of trauma. It saved us in the moment. However, because we're not the animal kingdom has the ability to shake that off immediately. It's their animal instinct. You watch a gazelle that outruns a lion and they just have this moment of shaking. That's them shaking off the trauma. We don't have that built-in mechanism. So we carry it in our body and it registers. Trauma doesn't come back as a memory. It comes back as tension. It comes back as a pattern of reactivity. So anytime that we're reacting to the world, if we find ourselves being very overreactive, it actually has nothing to do with the moment. That was just the trigger. It has something to do with some old story. Yeah. And so these are the things that control our life. In trauma therapy, and we have this thing, it's called the window of tolerance. It's like response flexibility. And so we all know those people, they have very short window of tolerance. This basically means that anytime that something happens, an external stimulus, it's boom, they're super upset, they're super frustrated, they're super triggered, extremely emotional. And then you know people who they've done a lot of work and they don't really react to a whole lot. You know, anything could be going on. We could have a storm passing through this retreat and we would be finding the wisdom and the why this needed to be very quickly in full acceptance and in full surrender. This is like a big window of tolerance, big response flexibility. And so what trauma does is it creates these very small little windows so that we are victims of our circumstances. And these are the things that create our patterns of toxic relationships and our people pleasing and our anger issues and our sleep issues and all of these things, all as a result of all this traumatic imprinting and traumatic residue that we're carrying inside of our body. Mm-hmm. And it's registering as all of these crazy patterns of behavior that we have the ability to purge out, but it needs a pressure release valve, and breathwork is that pressure release valve.
I like every time when you're saying this, yes, like, you know, my inner voice, yes, like really, it's such a powerful tool, guys. You need to try it, and I think you have online course and people can try it online, so like people have a possibility from all the parts of the world try this amazing tool and finally release and let go about of all these traumas.
That's it.
And tell me how like the breathwork can help with anxiety and depression, because like a lot of people are stuck really in such a state, and how the breathwork can help, like really.
Yeah.
Because 90 breathwork, yes, you can do it once, or I don't know if it's possible to do it more often, how often it is possible to do it. So like I really, a lot of people that I know, they have this like anxiety and depression. So how breathwork can help?
A lot of different ways.
Love it.
Yeah, anxiety and depression is one of those things. How can breathwork help? The thing is like we have all of these anxiety and depression are just patterns also that we've picked up along the way. We get stuck in these states. It's all based on our nervous system. It's all energy really in the end. And when we carrying all of that in our body as well, all of these patterns and these things that lead to the anxiety and the depression, it's all trapped energy that's in the body. And so the thing is when we have this trapped energy in the body, what breathwork does, it's not like a magic wand. There's a scientific element there. It's essentially what breathwork does is it brings this stuff up to the surface so that we can feel what needed to be felt that wasn't felt at the time. And so this is what John Heron, one of the guys my research guys that I follow, he calls it the theory of human catharsis. And essentially the theory of human catharsis is that we've been born into this conditioned non-cathartic society. It's not okay to cry. Big boys don't cry. Good girls can't get angry. You shouldn't wear your heart on your sleeve. We have all these sayings and expressions that tell us that we need to suppress our emotions. And we're designed to be emotional creatures. We need to be emotional. And so what he is essentially posited is that when we're releasing all this energy from the body, you've seen all the different forms that it's taken, right? It comes sometimes when it's sweating and shaking. Well, sweating and shaking is releasing fear from the body. Crying and sobbing, like deep cry, that's shame and grief. Laughing hysterically, you've probably seen that in breathwork. That's embarrassment and guilt. When we yawn, we release fatigue. And when we're screaming like we do in 9D breathwork, we're releasing all of that anger. And so what breathwork does for things like anxiety, depression, it's like a nervous system reset. The anxiety and depression live on the scale of what's called in breathwork and nervous system science polyvagal theory, where we get stuck in this kind of dorsal vagal kind of freeze complex, which ultimately is it's just an area of energy that we get stuck in. That leads to all these symptoms of depression, and then people oscillate. Sometimes they're depressed, sometimes they're anxious, sometimes they're anxious, sometimes they're depressed, and they go back and forth on this little thing. And so the problem is right now is we live in a world where the solution to that is throwing all sorts of pharmaceutical medication at young children. It's just crazy. Back in the 1970s, there was 106 diagnoses for mental health, 106 official diagnoses. You know how many there are now? 360. 360 official mental health diagnoses. And what we're doing is we are classifying all these common characteristics of what it means just to be human as some form of mental health issue, so that we can justify the pharmaceutical industry and the teachers and the therapists prescribing all these medications that are designed to do what? Numb the pain. Well, what happens to the pain when it's numbed? Does it come out?
No.
No, it buries it deeper. So we're putting a massive Band-Aid over this cut, but the reality is all we need to do is to be able to figure out how to create these experiences of catharsis that allows the body to release this energy. Healing has a mathematical equation. It's very simple. Are you ready to hear it?
Yeah. Sure.
Healing equals safety plus vulnerability. Think about that.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Agree.
What do we do inside of these breathwork journeys? We create a container of what?
Safe container where you can release.
Feel safe
and
to feel vulnerable. Now, how many other places do you know outside of breathwork that we're creating little containers where it's safe for people to feel vulnerable enough to release their emotions and their trapped energy and the stored tension? Not enough. And so breathwork is like the pressure cooker. It's the hermetic container where we are, by design, going into an environment of discomfort to allow our bodies to do what our bodies are designed to do. We have this natural healing capacity. We have the natural healer that's built inside of us. It's our body's natural wisdom and healing intelligence. And so when we hand over the control to our bodies know exactly what they need to do to purge and heal. The only thing that gets in the way is the mind, because we're living 99% of our life up here. When we slow down the brain waves, which is what breathwork does, 9D breathwork specifically, when we slow down the brain waves, the conscious mind slows down. The analytical faculty slows down. This is the little engine that's continuing to perpetuate the problem, because the problem is never the problem. It's our relationship to the problem that's the problem. That's always the relationship to the problem. Something that's a problem for you might not be a problem for me at all. Something that's a problem for me might not be a problem for you at all. It's always the relationship. And so when we go into our body, into our soma, our somatic intelligence, the body will just take over, and guess what? The mind doesn't have to know what the is going on or what the problem is. It doesn't matter what the issue is, and that's the thing. It's like we get so hung up on trying to figure out what the issue is. Sometimes the answer is just to surrender what the issue is and let the body take over and let the body do what it's designed to do.
The body has all the wisdom. Tell us about your daily rituals or spiritual practices that influence the results at work or allow you to be more at peace on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And how can individuals integrate breathwork into their daily routines to enhance mental clarity, focus, and emotional balance?
Sure. There's a couple questions in there. First of all, big somatic release journeys are great, but you don't really want to do those every single day.
Yeah.
Unless you're in a retreat environment where it's by design, you're just doing this big release and you have people around you that can hold space for you. Once a week for a big journey is more than enough. Eventually, once a month is more than enough. I only do them now when I feel called in to do them, when I really feel that tension building and I know that I need to release it. My morning practice for breath work is two things. Like doing about 10 or 15 minutes of like controlled
breathing.
Do that to start the day, followed by maybe a little bit of meditation is like my anchor point to start the day. Just a little bit of breath work, 15 to 20 minutes. But you want to know what the key is? The key is not even necessarily in short burst practice. The key is simply slowing down, becoming aware of the breath and slowing it down as much as possible throughout the day. Because the thing is, we've been conditioned into being these overbreathers, and when we overbreathe, we're triggering this state of fight or flight that's happening, that it's called our sympathetic nervous system, and it's dominant, and it keeps people locked in this pattern of stress and overwhelm and anxiety. When we slow our breath down, when we hold our heart, we slow our breath down. Slowing the breath triggers safety in the body. This is the place that is where all the magic happens. Because what happens when we feel safe? When we feel safe, we're in this beautiful state of healing that happens. It's the body's natural. We're going into digestion. The body is slowing down. The blood vessels are widening. We're getting all this oxygenation into our system. We're getting into this beautiful place where the body's natural healing is going to come in and take over. When we slow down, we take moments to simply become breath aware, slow down our breath. We're staying in this place of calm, tranquility, relaxation. I guided this young kid. He was neurodivergent. He had crazy anxiety, crazy overwhelm. He had so many different conditions, and he was on all sorts of different medications. But bless his mom brought him to me to see if we could work some of this out. All I did with him, the first thing I did with him was just 5-minute practice of just slowing down his breathing. Actually, I don't even think it was 5 minutes. I think it was just 5 breaths. And all I did was get him to slow down his exhale, which slowed down his system. And he came out, and here's what he said. He went, "Holy shit." It was like this revelation. He's like, I didn't realize that was possible. It was just slowing down his exhale and coming into a nice, slow, and rhythmic breath. No one had ever told him that before, that he could take control, conscious control of his nervous system like a remote, but simply slowing down, especially the exhale, because every time we exhale, this is the parasympathetic rest and digest side of the breath. When we extend that exhale, we come into this place of homeostasis is what it's called. Homeostasis is when the body is naturally healing itself. We have the ability to do that literally. The crew can be doing this right now to calm ourselves down, come to our center. When we come to our center, we come into the present moment. This is my practice now, is to become as breath aware as I can, as often as I can, and anytime I'm breath aware, to simply slow my breath down. For everybody else that might be new into breath work, jump into Big Journeys, because that will boom. Next thing you know, you got the cap that blasts off the top of the soda bottle, and there's going to be that natural enthusiasm to figure out, what do I need to bring this modality into my life? And the most important thing is to just make a practice out of it. Whether it be morning, afternoon, night to go to sleep, or just simply coming into breath awareness, set your alarm. In the beginning, I was setting my alarm once an hour to just simply become breath aware. Now I'm doing it naturally. I don't need an alarm so much, but this is the path to freedom. This is the path to liberation. This is the path to living less in the head, more in the body, living balanced, living harmonious, being more self-aware, being more self-loving, coming back to the essence of who we are, that creation element that we're all here to explore.
And they have full yes for everything what you said, because this is, for me, it's like natural medicine. We don't need all these medications, etc. We just need to breathe out, and we can come back to the presence and live the life consciously in awareness and create the reality that we want. Thank you so much for sharing this for creating this amazing tool, and for sharing this tool with the listeners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh.